Hello guys, welcome back to another episode here on African Confessions. There is a message that I want to share with you guys, and this message, it comes from a translation of a message that I received. The message reads like this. Hello brother Nanshi, how are you? Can you please share my confession with my fellow Africans? I am a woman who is aged 50 years. I am currently residing in America, but originally I am from Zimbabwe. My story goes like this. Growing up, my father was always a suspicious man. Yes, indeed, he was a well-established businessman, but there were other things that he used to do behind closed doors. And my father was someone who really had a higher position in the church in which he used to go to. So on that day, when I had this confession, when you were saying that if you have ever been given a higher position in church simply because you are wealthy, I then thought of coming to you so that I can give you my own testimony, so that people out there can know that if you go to a certain church, do not just respect anyone that you see in church simply because they have a higher position and simply because they are much wealthier than you are, because you do not know the true source of their wealth. This is what happened to my father. Growing up, all of my sisters, they were married, and the way that my sisters got married is that my father was the one who chose their husbands. All of my sisters got married in the same church where my parents used to go to. Even now, my sisters that are still in Zim, they still go to that same church. So what my father will do is that he will choose the kind of a man that he wanted you to get married to. And I think that the reason why my father chose all of the men that he wanted us to get married to, it was because he still wanted to have total control over our lives. Because growing up, we were all controlled by our father. We were not allowed to go out so much, and we all went to private schools. And the private schools where we went to, most of the people there, they knew how to mind their own business, because all of us in those private schools, we came from very wealthy families in Zim. My father used to do a lot of weird things. We used to go to church on Sunday, but on Saturday night, the money that he wanted to go with to church, I don't know why, the money would slip outside. He would take his wallet, then he would place the money inside the wallet, then he would throw out the wallet through the window. Then early in the morning, before most of the people had woken up, my father would go outside and collect the money, and that was the same money that he would then give to the church as like free will offering, and the other money that he would give at church. This money, it used to slip outside. The reason why, I don't even know. My father used to do a lot of weird things, like my sisters that were married to their husbands that were chosen for them by my father. What my father used to do is that whenever he would feel that my sisters had to run away from their marriages, my father then will take out his walking stick that was always hidden in his bedroom. He used to take out this walking stick when he was going to visit this other traditional healer. So whenever he would feel like he wanted his daughters to run out of their marriages, he would then take out that walking stick and he would go outside. He would start to tap that walking stick onto the ground, saying a few words. Then on that same day or in the evening, one of my sisters would drive back home. Then she will start to complain, and she will say that she wants a divorce from her husband. All of my sisters, they had their own houses even before they had gotten married to their husbands, so they were very independent. And the way that my father had chosen all of these men that eventually got married to my sisters, it was that all of those men, they came from poor backgrounds. So my father had total control over his sons-in-law. In our culture, it is taboo for a father-in-law to discuss bedroom matters with his sons-in-law. But my father, this is what he used to do. Whenever my sisters would come back home and they will start to complain that they don't want to return back to their marriages. So when my sister's husband will come to our place so that they can try to have a discussion, my father will then become the center of that discussion. Even though you will see that my sister's husbands, they will be so embarrassed to discuss bedroom matters with my father, but my father was never ashamed to discuss such matters with his sons-in-law. But when I was a mature young lady, that is when I understood why my father was never ashamed to discuss bedroom matters with his own sons-in-law, this thing which was taboo in our culture. When I was a little bit mature, somewhere around 16 years, even though my father was a wealthy man, but we never had any passports. I only got a passport when my father started to get sick. That is when I rebelled against my father. After I had fallen in love with this other man and I had walked out of my marriage against the will of my father because I had had enough with the control. My father was such a control freak. But at that time, when my father took me to Angola, there was this other man whom he wanted to meet. That man was one of the traditional healers that my father used to visit very often. I don't even know how my father managed to get me onto the aeroplane without having a passport. My father had a passport, but I went to Angola and we came back. I didn't even have a passport. He used a lot of charms. There was this other charm that he used to walk around with. The charm was always in his wallet. So that time when we were traveling to Angola so that we can meet up with his traditional healer, he then gave me his wallet. He told me that I was supposed to keep his wallet in my pockets at all times. So from Zim going to South Africa and catching our connecting flight to Angola, through the checkpoints, no one ever asked for my passport. And I knew that this was possible because my father had given me his wallet and he had told me never to take out that wallet from my pockets because that wallet, it always had this charm. This charm used to give my father a lot of money. And by the time that we had gone to Angola, my father wanted to renew that charm because it seemed as if the charm was now fading away. It was more powerless because a lot of robberies were happening at my father's businesses. This was like a week in, week out thing. Each and every week, my father was losing a lot of money. So he said that we had to travel to Angola. When we traveled to Angola, my brother, a lot of horrific stuff happened to me, traumatizing things. Even now, I am still traumatized by the things that my father did to me. Because once we had landed in Angola, there was another man who was waiting for us. Then we went to his traditional healer. Whilst we were there, it was as if me and my father, we were getting ready to get married. Then on one night, whilst I was sleeping in this other room, which I was sleeping alone, I then saw my father entering into that room where I was sleeping. Once he had entered into that room, then he took off the clothes that I was wearing. Then he started to abuse me. That is how I lost my virginity. After my father had finished sleeping with me, I saw him wiping off the blood that was on his manhood. After my father had finished abusing me, he then took a wooden plate, and inside that wooden plate there was water that had herbs that were mixed with the water. Then he started to wash his manhood. By the time that he had finished washing his manhood, the water had turned red. After he had forced me to wash my private parts with the same water, he then told me that I was supposed to go outside. When I went outside, there were other women that were waiting for me. They took me into another room where they continued to wash my private parts with some herbs, and those herbs that they used to wash my private parts. They were so painful. After they had finished washing my private parts with those herbs, then they made some markings on my private parts with some razor blades. Even now, I still have those 4 markings on my private parts, 2 on the right side, 2 on the left side. After those rituals were done, we spent about 3 days whilst we were at that traditional healer's place. Then we acted as if this was a vacation. We just toured Angola for a little bit. Then we returned back to Zim. And when we returned back to Zim, we went through the checkpoints again, and no one even dared to ask me for a passport. Once we had landed in Zim, my father then asked me to give him his wallet back. But the way that he asked for his wallet, it was not in a demanding way, but he did some rituals first before I could give him the wallet. After I had given him the wallet, we went back home. Then after 3 months, he started to enter into my spare room, which I used to sleep in when I was still a teenager. My father would come into that spare room where I used to sleep. Then he would perform his rituals. After performing the rituals, he would take me out of bed. Then he would place me on the floor. Then me and him will start to get intimate. During the first days when he would come into my room, this was really painful to me. But the more that he did these rituals on me, the more that I started to enjoy this. We did this for many months, performing this kind of a ritual. That is when I found out that I had fallen pregnant. When I had found out that I had fallen pregnant, I then informed my mother, because she knew that all of these rituals were being performed on me. When I found out that I was pregnant, my father then selected this other young man who later became my first husband in my first marriage. The thing was done so quick. That young man, one day, he was picked up by my father. Then my father came back home with that man. Then they had a little bit of a discussion. After having the discussion, that is when my father and my mother told me that they had chosen this young man and they wanted him to become my husband. In a short period of time, me and that young man, we were married, but I had never fallen in love with that young man. That is why in the end, I chose to walk away from that marriage. Even on my wedding day, my mother and my father, they both knew that I was pregnant, and the pregnancy that I was carrying, it did not belong to the man that I was getting married to. This is the reason why I chose to walk away from that marriage. After I had matured a little bit, when I had fallen in love again, I then chose to run away. That is how I came here to the United States after the passing away of my father. When they informed me that my father had passed away, I never had any intentions to return back so as to attend his funeral, because I was afraid that if I return back to Zim, maybe a lot of bad stuff will happen to me. The situation that I face now, and I want to thank God that the man that I got married to, he is an understanding man, because on some occasions we can try to be intimate, but the marks that were placed on my private parts, it seems as if on another occasions those marks, they affect his libido, because there are many times when we try to have intercourse, then his manhood will just stop working. And we all know that the reason why these things happen, it is because of the markings that were made on my private parts. But I want to thank God that he is quite an understanding man. And I do have countless dreams, and most of the times when I am dreaming, I always see my father, and I feel as if I am still connected to the spirit of my late father because of the markings that were placed on my private parts. Right now, there is a church in which I go to. They have tried to pray for me, but those markings, they don't disappear. When someone tries to pray for me, I can actually feel those markings moving or shifting the position. But after the person that will be praying for me have finished praying for me, then I'll feel those markings returning back to their original place. Dear listeners, right there was a message that I received from our dear sister. Then I had to ask, one of our admins to give us a translation. Strange things do happen in this world.